thanks so much for coming in, dude. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while. I think I hit you up like months ago. You probably know better than me. Push this a little closer. It's all good. I became aware of you like you were just saying when I saw a couple clips that went viral, and I was like, this guy is like so impressive because a lot of people probably know what I'm talking about, but Phillip went to the city council and basically like collapsed a city commissioner like in front of our eyes. And I've never seen that, like a commissioner just walk out. And yeah, your whole argument and speech was so articulate and like well thought out and needed, I think, at the time. And that's kind of how I became aware of you. But I was going to ask you, like, how did that change your life? Because like I would imagine after that things were quite a bit different, and like that's how I found out about you and became a fan of you and stuff. And so like what kind of happened after that, and how did that change things for you?
Well, that was a really interesting day, and I don't think people realize how much I did not want to do that by myself, but I pimped that story to every single news organization in the city, plus OPB or OPB, who had run some previous like Hersey scandal papers. No one would touch that story. And so, a month before election, like if this is going to get out there, I'm going to have to do it. And so I did it. And that day was weird because I spent like 5 minutes talking with Commissioner Maps. 5 minutes. I just like, hey, nice to meet you. My name's Phillip. This is what I think we should do with city charter reform. Like I preferred like maybe 12 single districts and not like 4 with 3 people. I just thought it made more sense.
That was like going on at the same time.
Yeah, like Maps had his own idea for it, but he got obviously lost that battle.
Yeah.
And so I spent 5 minutes talking with him. And then before the whole thing, I had spent a year trying, because I thought, it's a simple misunderstanding. She simply misspoke. She's older.
Yeah.
It happens. But, I emailed her a few times trying to get feedback, and she completely ignored me. And so I did an experiment where I donated like $10 to a campaign, and then I emailed her office saying like, hey, I'm having trouble with my donation. Within 2 hours, her office responded to me. So at that point, I knew I was definitely getting blown off. And so I talked to her on the council. At that point, Joanne, she yelled at the other commissioners to stop the meeting. And then, she jumped up and left. And she had left by the time I came back. I left immediately afterwards, but when she came back, she interrupted another speaker's speech. And then she's like, me is Map's best friend. She thought, like, they're conspiring against me, and he's a liar and a political opportunist, and I'm a black woman, and he doesn't know what I'm going through. And so
this is all beforehand, right? Is that what you're saying? Or
no, this was after
okay.
After she stormed out and she came back.
Gotcha.
I had already left by that point. And no, nothing really happened. No news story or no news organization even bothered to cover that story, except for Andy Now and a couple pro-police websites, which obviously they have a beef with her.
That's a good point, actually. I never thought about that. How because one of the things I was going to ask you, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep pushing this. I'm an audiophile, but one of the things I was going to ask you was like to me that was definitely a turning point in that election. And like I'm not saying like you were responsible for it, but you were definitely, I think, instrumental in that shift. Because I think there were probably a lot of people who were right on the edge of like, I'll still vote for her, give her the benefit of the doubt. But you just made such a good case of like a politician who was kind of at the end of her rope and also, maybe not being honest with the public. But yeah, that's curious that you pointed out like the media didn't cover that, because to me that was a precipice of like basically ending her run in a way.
Well, I'd like to think I had some smart part in it, but this was like after scandal after scandal after scandal.
That's true.
And like, it's just amazing that, they had their IRS troubles, like not paying their taxes. Then they had the Lyft scandal. And it was just scandal after scandal, the NAACP scandals, and just
during all the riots, I know that was a lot of it of, blaming people for starting fires.
Well, the police department.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of battles with the police. And so, yeah, it's really interesting. But how did that change like after that happened? Did your life like blow up in a good way or?
Not at all. Not
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
I had talked to Rational in Portland like 2 days before that.
Okay.
Like before
Yeah.
that whole thing.
And I've listened to that podcast. Everyone should check it out. It's good.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but that was just like off to the side. But yeah, afterwards, like, I got maybe a couple dozen comments on Twitter. It went viral with Andy Now, and I got like thousands of hits. Yeah. But like my day-to-day life, no difference. Nothing happened. And so I did cheer when she lost, but that's about it.
Okay.
And then she did do an interview with Oregon Public Broadcasting, and she blamed like those white supremacists for like misinformation.
Yeah.
And like my research was like ironclad.
Yeah.
So I was kind of hoping she would try to sue me for defamation, which I could destroy her for that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that would have been interesting. It is really interesting because like you were just saying, like, and this is a problem I have with like current media, local media too, is like, you were kind of doing their job, I think, as far as FOIA requests and finding this information out. And like, honestly, a lot of that stuff should have probably been done before she ever got elected. But I'm glad you were doing it because, the local media.
And like I said, I pimped that story to almost every influential journalist and every single news organization in Portland. And the OPB, who had won previous like scandals. No one touched that story. No one even bothered to reply to me.
Yeah.
It's just super frustrating.
Yeah. So, yeah. I wanted to start that off because that's probably how a lot of people know Phillip, and that's how I was introduced to him. But if you haven't checked all this out, it's still online. You can find the clip. I'm sure it's on YouTube or Twitter. Just go check it out. It's really interesting. I just wanted to get that out of the way because to me, like, that's how you're kind of famous. I don't know if you consider yourself famous, but I don't know. I know in the Rational Portland podcast, she talked a lot about you going into politics or maybe news or something. And I think to me, that's a huge like indicator of like, yeah, this is an awesome person in those arenas. But anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about, tell me what it's like living downtown right now, because I lived down there in like 2007, 2008, and it was like completely different story. Like I didn't have a car like most people probably don't, and you could like walk around any time of the day and feel fine without, any worries. And now when I go down there, it feels like Mad Max, like especially at night. And I'm just curious, like what it's like for you being a student there.
Well, as far as like walking into Safeway, you probably want to avoid it after 10 p.m. That's when all the characters come out. But it hasn't really been too bad for me. Probably the worst thing was when that church got burned down.
Oh, yeah.
And it was pretty smoky for about a week.
Okay.
But actually, one of a guy I'm really close to, his name's Kerry, and he's homeless. And we'd actually lived in a homeless shelter for a few months in 2016-ish.
Yeah.
And, I was able to get my life back together and go back to school. But, he's still homeless, and he sells papers outside of Safeway.
Okay. Street roots?
Yes. But fortunately, he's a horrific alcoholic, and he makes horrible decisions when he's drunk. And he can't stay housed because of that.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people have similar stories. And that's why I think something like Housing First will not work. They need rehab first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm totally on that page of like, this is an addiction problem. It's not a housing problem. You give a free house to somebody like that and they're just going to do drugs inside all day. And,
Well, exactly. The Willamette Week just did like a big news story where they were complaining about, they do low income housing, and so all these homeless people were like walking the street, walking the walking the halls with like weapons and like knocking on doors randomly, and we just lost like a major low income housing development downtown because this psycho guy burnt the apartment to the ground. And he was digging holes into other apartments. And so like 30, 40 people lost their apartment.
Yeah. You're talking about the one...
The May?
Yeah. I don't know the name of it, but it was close to Channel 8 where I used to work, I think. Yeah. The one's like a little mini store at the bottom.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But this was like...
A couple weeks ago.
A month ago. So yeah. Yeah, it is really... it's wild. But I also wanted to ask you about... Are you close to graduating or being done with school?
No, I have like 2 more years.
Okay. Because I know like Rational in Portland was asking about this, but do you have a more concrete idea of what you want to do when you're done, or Because like I said, I just think you're a really talented guy and like smart guy and everything.
Well, I was thinking I wanted to become a physician, but after doing more hard science classes, I really don't care. Like learning about like histones and blood chemistry, I really don't have any passion for it. But I do love politics, especially local politics. And so I think maybe I'd like to work on like a campaign, or maybe work for like a super PAC, maybe go to law school. I'm not exactly sure right now.
Those all sound really interesting to me, I think. Yeah. What do you think? I'll start like locally first. And obviously we've talked about some of these already, but like in that campaign like realm, what are the more like current issues, like I would say, of like this month or past couple months with Portland, do you think? Is it just kind of those main ones, homelessness and
Yeah, I mean, that's a major issue. As far as like who's going to run next year, they can't really announce until like next summer. And so that's when we're like, I mean, we can definitely speculate who's going to run. But as far as like that detailed list, we won't know for like another year.
What do you think though, as far as like issues, like how do you feel about the city council reform? Because like that's, as far as I know, it's going to happen, right? And they're going to sort of sorting it out now, and then we'll have like 12 seats or whatever you call it.
I wasn't a fan. I voted against it. I think we're going to get a lot of characters where if you only need like 25% plus one, we're going to get a lot of characters. And I think we can see a lot of people like joining teams. And so, yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah. It seems very, at least the one that was voted in seems very like problematic. And I think you'll see a lot of old characters come in to run for those races because there's more opportunity now. I think it's like, I was all for city commission reform for years, and I just don't think this is the right way to do it. But yeah, that is interesting.
Well, yesterday it was reported in the Oregonian that the Independent Salary Commission is trying to raise the commissioner's salary. They're doing less work, but they're getting almost a $20K raise. And so, and they said like they don't want to focus on market salary. They want it to be anti-oppressive. But $140K a year is pretty nice.
Yeah, it's not too shabby. Yeah, and that's for like the 12 or whatever. Oh, okay.
Yes, plus the mayor's like 152-ish.
Wow, yeah, that is a lot. What about like statewide? Do you see different problems there, or because like we were just talking about like the Oregon DMV breach, and it seems like this state always has something going on like that. Do you see like big issues though, as far as like statewide, that are different from the city?
Well, I mean, you did have that scandal with Fagan, which blew up, and it's probably going to, and I'm predicting it's maybe going to touch Kotek.
Okay.
Because she said she didn't know about that scandal until it broke in the newspaper. That's not true. The Oregonian reported that she actually knew about it a week beforehand. And so, yeah.
Wasn't there something also, I thought I saw something this week that was the same thing, but with, I think it was Jeff Merkley or somebody, one of the senators. I think it was Ron Wyden, actually. Sorry, got that wrong, but I think it was Ron Wyden. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't know. I know who you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Well, I think it was the same type of thing of like the Fagan thing is like touching a lot of people, and I think he was one of them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, actually, when Heidi was here last week, I think she was the one telling me that it's like a federal investigation now, or somebody was saying that. So that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
You know, the acting Secretary of State, Cynthia somebody, they actually cut the Democratic Party a big sweetheart deal because do you know about that whole $500K donation thing?
I know. You should lay it out for me because I've heard a lot about it, and I think that's what I was talking about with Ron Wyden. Like he was involved with that or something. But yeah, you should tell me about it.
So a couple of months ago, I think it was like early last year or last fall, the FTX guy, you know, that disgraced cyber currency thing that just went belly up.
Yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, one of his henchmen had donated $500K to the Democratic Party of Oregon. But it turns out, okay, he sent that money through a wire transfer through somebody called Prime Trust. Okay. And so the Democratic Party of Oregon reported Prime Trust as the originator of the wire. But that's illegal. Because and so they had to change that when they figured out the originator was the disgraced FTX guy. But they knew it was illegal from the beginning because when the guy sent the wire, it had his name on it and plus Prime Trust Wire Services. And so they actually emailed him saying, hey, should we put your name on this or do you want us to put the Prime Trust name on it? And it's like, oh no, put the Prime Trust on it. We don't want to get in trouble. And so completely illegal.
Yeah, I'll say, is that the part that's illegal?
Yes.
Like masking where the donation's coming from?
And they later said they had no idea, but as I just said, like they read the wire transfer, it had his name on it, and they emailed the guy, and so they knew damn well where it came from, and so,
So yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to help you. Like, so the fallout from that, is that kind of what you're?
Right. The fallout was that, and so acting Secretary of State, like Cynthia somebody, she said like, well, okay, we're not going to prosecute you guys criminally, and we're going to cut the fine to like 15 grand. It might even be lower. And so completely cut them a sweetheart deal. But now, thankfully, the feds are looking into it. So it might take a couple years, but hopefully some heads will roll.
And you think that could go all the way up to the governor? That part, or just
Not that part.
Okay.
But like
Other
the
pieces
Fagans thing, maybe.
Gotcha.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I see. It's hard for me to like sometimes like separate all the, I guess you'd call it corruption. There's just this past year specifically, there's been a lot of stuff going on like that. But yeah, it's all really interesting, and that's why I'm asking you, because like I don't follow this stuff as closely as you, so I'm always curious like what people keep their eye on as far as like trending problems, issues in the state. I'm curious, what do you think about the overall election next year? Like, do you have any predictions as to what would happen?
Well, like I said, I'm sure we're going to cut a couple characters. I'm sure Sarah Ioni's going to run. She's quite a character.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can. Hardesty, I don't know if she's going to run or not. I think we can expect Candace Angelos and AJ McCrary.
Okay.
Outside of that, they're each characters in their own way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most of them have blocked me on Twitter, and so I really can't get any of the good gossip anymore. And I'm too lazy to like log out and look at their stuff and log back in.
Yeah. How does that work now? I'm pretty sure. I guess since they're out of office, they can do that. But if you're elected, I didn't think you can block people.
No. Yeah. If it's an official candidate website or official politician website, they cannot block you, but they still do anyway. But if it's a candidate's like campaign website, they can block you.
Okay, gotcha. Outside of that, though, I mean, I meant like the national election. And
shit!
Obviously, you don't have to like. If you don't have any feelings, you don't have to answer that. But I'm just curious. I feel like you have a better political mind than me. So.
Well, I think they're gonna prop up Biden for another term, right? I mean, as much as everyone hates him, but like,
kind of their only option.
Yeah, their bench is really, really shallow.
Yeah.
And so who are you going to put up there? Kamala? She got like destroyed in the primaries, like 1%, 2%. There's no bench.
Yeah.
The Republicans, who knows? I mean, Trump might be, I don't know. From what I've been reading, various sites, they took a pretty aggressive approach. And the guy they hired to be the lead counsel in that case is an idiot. He prosecuted, like, I want to say, like, the governor of Virginia a couple years ago. And he completely overcharged him, and he was found innocent. And it was so bad that the Supreme Court, like, slapped him down, like, 8-0, 9-0, because he's an idiot.
It was a unanimous.
Yeah, so he got slapped down hard. And so...
Are you talking about, is this the New York guy, or there's a different...
His name's Jack something.
Okay.
And so they put an absolute idiot in front of it. And so maybe I'm thinking, if this goes south and Trump's not charged, we can just blame it on that guy. Who has a history of being incompetent.
Yeah, because there's a history there, and you can do that, yeah.
And then, there's an obvious fight between, like, DeSantis and Trump, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I like DeSantis. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
He's as smart, he's as vicious, and he doesn't have all the baggage.
Yeah. At least I kind of feel like at least there's more candidacy options on that side than, I mean, it seems like they're the only ones that have candidate options, like we were just saying, like, on the Democratic side, there's not, it would appear, a lot of good options for them. But yeah, is that kind of, do you feel like a tide shift, or do you seem like that would happen next year as far as Congress and president and all that stuff? It's hard to predict, obviously. But
I don't know. I mean, most presidents win a second term. I'm sure he'll get a second term.
Yeah. It's hard to, overcome that. Yeah.
Yeah, then come and see advantage.
Can we talk about because I did want to talk about your homeless stuff for a little bit.
Okay.
If that's okay. We don't have to.
We can.
Because I know on Rational in Portland, she also asked you a bunch of stuff about it.
Yeah, I kind of regret being so vulnerable, but it is what it is.
What do you mean by that?
Anytime you're talking about part of your past that you have regrets about or you're ashamed about.
I see. Yeah. Well, it's just to me it makes you more impressive to me because like that's a lot to overcome in your life, and what you're doing right now and everything just seems like such a triumphant like success over that, and at the same time I think the way I heard you talk about it on Rational in Portland, it just seemed like you were a much maybe more humble person than I see on the streets now, and I know maybe that's because you weren't doing drugs and stuff, but I don't know, it's just interesting to me that you are like a success story to come out of that, and
Well, I probably had a little bit of an ego before that, but there was definitely a humbling experience. And like you said, I was never panhandling. I was never panhandling. I never did drugs. And so, but I eventually had to reach that point where like, I need help. I'm going to go get help. And like, there's so many resources out there. You just have to ask for them. And like a lot of the people that I talk to, and I would spend hours in my central library talking to these people, like they moved out here for the lifestyle, like to be homeless or just to use drugs. Right. I'm not saying all of them, obviously, but it's a pretty large percentage.
Yeah, there's definitely an appeal for that. And I keep shouting out Kevin Dahlgren, but he has a lot of videos of people literally saying that. Of like,
and there's a guy in California who also handles it named, I believe, Michael Schellenberger.
Yeah. He
wrote a big book about it. I think he ran for like mayor. And so he's another really interesting voice in the field.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Well, can we go back to the Oregon DMV hack?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, so Portland and Oregon have a horrible history when it comes to like safeguarding cyber information. So Oregon DMV just hacked, and pretty much everyone's information got out there. But it took them a week and a half to even discover there'd been a hack, which is just incompetence. Yeah. But in like Portland, since 2019, we've lost over $4 million to cyber hackers. Portland Public Schools lost $3 million. And then about 2 years ago, we lost another $1.4 million because like someone pretended to be Central City Concerned. They sent them an invoice for like $1.4 million. And when, like in the Treasury, get this, they said, hey, this is most likely fraudulent. You guys look into this. And so what they did was they looked on the paperwork and they called back the hacker confirming that was his bank account instead of, having a brain and looking into official, paperwork they had and saying like, oh, hey, these aren't the same people. And so do you know what those two people got for losing $1.4 million? A 2-day suspension.
Wow. And they're still working there. Probably,
yeah. If that was a private industry, they'd be gone.
Yeah.
And so I think, Oregon politics need like less JDs and more like MBAs or something. Or just speaking common sense.
Yeah.
If the Treasury says like, hey, this is like fraudulent, and they ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely, I know that's fraud, and that's a different thing of what I'm thinking of, but it just seems like a lot of this like auditing and stuff like really needs to happen, especially I was glad to see the city commissioners recently, like, you probably know more about this, but I think MAPS or somebody pulled a lot of their support for the nonprofits that didn't like deploy this money over COVID. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, he lost that battle. They got the money back.
They didn't win the vote.
Yeah.
But I'm at least happy to hear people, opposing some of that, because it just seems like, and this is the classic like government waste and all that, but in Portland it's like the heart of it seems like right now.
Well, we give a whole bunch of money to nonprofits, and there's like no tracking of outcomes. We have no idea how this money's being spent. And like Heidi was saying, like, where is the money going?
Yeah.
What's it doing? And so a couple years ago, like the Joint Homeless Office, they were audited by the Multnomah County Councilor, and they found out that they had been lying about placements, like homeless people placements. They inflated that number by like 25%. Once again, no one lost any jobs. In addition, like I think the guy's name was Mike Joplin, who ran it at the time. His wife was given fat contracts, And like they said, like you know, the processes were completely siloed. He had no input into that process. He's just like a really good expert. But you know, that's politics. It's all about optics. I mean, that looks bad.
Yeah.
And they should have known better.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually didn't know that stuff. That's really interesting. I think to me that's like maybe your strength is like following the money with a lot of this stuff, and I don't know why that's so hard to do with like local, like any kind of media now. But
Well, I mean,
you're really good at it.
Well, let's bring up another issue of vetting and money. A couple years ago, like I want to say like late 2021, we gave this woman like a $12 million contract to like place like air conditioning units in low income housing.
Right.
And so just gave her $12 million. But the Oregonian did an investigative report where it turned out she was a convicted felon. She had defrauded numerous energy companies in the 90s. And it turned out, you know, once they did some background information into her grant application, she lied about mostly all of it. And so the city approved a $12 million grant, no criminal background check, no calling, you know, the references to say, did she do this? Did she do that? And you know what? She lost that contract, but the city gave her another contract for something else.
Really?
You think she would be banished forever from contract.
Like they at least just make a list that's like, no more with this person.
Which brings us back to Joanne Hardesty's contracting companies. She's had 3. She's gotten like major contracts from like Portland Public Schools, the Housing Administration, the Sheriff's Administration. None of those consulting companies have never been registered with the state, not once. And the Oregonian wrote like a really interesting article years ago saying like she probably owes a ton of back taxes. So once again, vetting.
Yeah.
How does an illegal, unlicensed consulting company get such lucrative and like coveted government contracts?
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy because, I don't know, there's so many things that are difficult in this state and country to get. You know, you get a new car, a firearm, different, I don't know, drug, like legal drugs you can buy. And they all seem to have like some kind of better vetting than that. But I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I do feel like I've been telling people this, where what I'm trying to do with this show is like help a turning point, like with a new movement of people who think differently. And maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know.
No,
but I feel like there are more people than there used to be, at least with that mindset.
Yeah, there's a bunch on Twitter now, which is probably my most active website or social media account. But yeah, there's a good core of like 10 people, I think, that are really pushing things.
Yeah, trying to move things in the right direction. Well, let me ask you this. I'm asking everyone this because I'm curious. You talked about this on the other podcast too, but was there something that brought you out to the Northwest? And also, like, do you have a favorite thing here? It could be a place or like restaurant, food, person.
Well, I'm originally from Illinois, but I've lived all over the country from Connecticut to Hawaii. And it was 2008, like the summer 2008, and I decided I need to move. So it's between here, Vegas, or Juneau, Alaska. And so I just randomly choose Portland. And I was probably like one of the first waves of like massive immigrant waves we've got, which was a couple years before Portlandia. And so,
yeah. That was a big time of migration.
Yeah, it was a couple years before that. And so, you know, I got I got over a decade of like Portland being an awesome, vibrant, foodie city. As far as favorite restaurants, I would recommend Devil's Dill on Hawthorne. They make the best sandwiches.
I have been there, yeah.
Amazing sandwiches. Yeah. Number 3.
Yeah. I used to live right by there, and I think at one point they were at least like late night, or they did 24 hours or something.
Well, they did from like 5 to 3, but they changed it to normal hours years ago.
Yeah. I feel like COVID like ended a lot of that late night stuff.
Well, and you know, they actually get their windows busted all the time. And on
I'm sure.
And on their Facebook page, like one of the owners was like, hey, our windows got busted again. Can we please not do this? And some of the activists were on there saying like, well, what have you donated to the community lately? We're going to keep busting your windows until you donate to the community.
Like, until you believe what I want, basically. That is a cool sandwich place, so shout out to them. I haven't been there in years, but like, yeah, they make a really...
I want to give a shout out to my favorite breakfast place, John's Cafe.
Okay.
It's a husband and wife team. They were off the boat from like Norway in like 1972. They've been running that place since like 1972.
Okay. I
Like,
love breakfast food. Where is that?
it's on Broadway, right by the art school.
Okay.
And so they've been running since 1972, and they were recently out for a couple weeks, and I thought they had died because they have to be in their 80s by now,
Okay.
right? And so anyway, for $10, toast, omelet, hash browns, a drink under
$10?
under $10
Today? Like that?
Yes,
Wow.
it's amazing.
Yeah, that's
it's all
a
cash. It's cash.
Inflation buster. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to pay cash though.
That is, yeah. I would pull out some cash for that. That's really,
Totally worth it.
yeah. I just, while you were talking, remembered what I wanted to ask you about also, and we don't have to talk about this if you don't, but I saw your a couple tweets about you like almost cutting your thumb off in the military, and I was curious if you want to tell that story or like any other military stories that are, but if not, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was like 17. I was standing information. I've never used a bayonet before, and so I was placing on my M16. And I cut my thumb, and it was bleeding. And so I'm just holding on to it on the ground. I'm just like dripping blood. And like, I'm not going to say a word. But then like my blood started spreading under a couple other guys' boots, and like they yelled. And so then I had to go get a whole bunch of stitches.
And they were like, oh, what's going on?
And I don't know, can I tell a risque story?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was also, after I got out of the National Guard, I went active duty Navy, and I was in a submarine.
Okay.
And I had this weird roommate, or not roommate, but like rack mate.
Bunkmate or whatever.
Right, because there's a limited amount of racks, and so you have to share.
Okay.
And so one day, I was just kind of like cleaning up my little nest, and I looked under my pillow, and there's a used condom. I'm like, what? And so I talked to the guy. I'm like, dude, it's completely cool that, you found someone that cares about you, but you cannot use a used condom under my rack or under my pillow. It's totally inappropriate. He's like, no, dude, you don't understand. I wasn't with anybody else. I'm like, I don't understand. No, dude, I was having safe sex with myself. I'm like, what?
Okay.
And so, yeah, it was a pretty crazy environment when you get like a whole bunch of like super intelligent, nerdy people together.
Yeah.
Weird things happen.
Yeah.
Well, now it's not like that anymore because I think they allowed women on in like the mid 2000s.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's different now.
Yeah. That would be crazy. 'Cause I've always thought if I was in the military, I would probably go in the Navy. But you're on a submarine for a while. Yeah.
And like it was weird. Like the first underway, they keep oxygen low. It normally is between like 17 and 18% up here. No, it's like 21% up here. When I sub, they cut it like 14, 15%. So
It's almost like being in like Colorado or something. Or
I don't know, but they cut it to like help prevent fires so they don't spread.
Sure.
And so the first time you come back, the first time I was ever underway and I came back, like I was up for days just because of that like increase in oxygen. But it didn't happen any other time, just that one time.
That's interesting.
The first time.
Yeah. And how long were you doing that? That was like
About 3 years.
3 years. Okay. Was there something that made you do that? Like, I don't know, because I almost went in the military, and then the Iraq War started and all that stuff, and I was like, all right, I don't think I'm gonna do this.
Well, this was before that.
Yeah.
I was in the Army from like 97-ish to 2001. Then I joined the Navy. That was like maybe February. 9/11 happened like months later.
Okay.
And so that was a wild day.
So it wasn't like the possibility of that wasn't even in your mind at that point.
No,
yeah.
no, not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is there any other stories you want to talk about with that? I just thought like military stuff's interesting to me, but
Well, we can talk about PSU.
yeah, you wanna
That's
talk about
definitely
that?
a weird experience at times.
Yeah.
I have to admit, it hasn't been as woke and crazy as I thought it would be. And so I asked around, and the common consensus is because they have so many PSUs in like dire financial trouble.
Oh,
like
really?
they're in
Okay.
a lot of trouble. And so they have to heavily recruit foreign students from like Saudi Arabia. Because like China has cut their Chinese students aren't coming anymore because they really don't value Western education anymore. And there's some kind of animosity there. But like, and so they heavily try to get Middle Eastern students here because like Middle Eastern countries pay for their students to come here and get degrees. And so the reason is it's not as woke as it could be was because that would turn off that like huge spigot of money. But
From the global student
yeah,
body.
so it hasn't been as crazy as I thought. There's definitely been a couple crazy moments where I was in a political science class and one of the girls was saying like, hey, let's just firebomb the conservative's office. And like I was hoping the professor would like, hey, no, don't do that.
Right.
But no, he didn't say anything. And in another class I wanted to take the craziest classes I could find as some electives. So I took a gender and sexuality class. Like the first day, they're like, everyone get up, tell me your pronouns and how you present. like masculine and feminine. That's kind of wild.
Yeah.
But it only happened that once.
Just on the first day.
But back to that class, there were two non-binary students, and like the teacher was like flamboyantly gay. Okay. He was a really good teacher, and so these two non-binary students, I guess I pissed them off with some comments I had said, and so they
Like in class or
totally innocent comments.
Yeah.
I don't even know why they were upset, and so we started whining for about an hour and a half straight. Like, this class is too hard. The readings are too difficult. It was a self-graded class.
Self-created. I don't even know what that means.
Self-graded. You gave yourself your own grade.
Oh, okay.
So it's self-graded. Like, this class is too hard. This is too difficult. This professor is misgendering me and picking on me. And it just went on and on and on. And so, and then after, and they stopped coming to class after that. But I was talking to the professor later, and they kept on harassing him online. And so he reported it to the school. And so he was so turned off by that whole experience. He called this, like, he was maybe in his mid-30s. And so it's like this new generation is weak. Like, I'm not teaching anymore. I quit. I'm never teaching ever again. So that one experience, like, totally turned him off to teaching. And he was an okay guy.
I mean, and do you know, did he leave entirely or just go to a different school? Or
well, originally he said he was just going to not renew his contract at PSU and go to PCC. But I was emailing him later, and he said, like, no, I'm done. I'm never teaching again. It's not worth it.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see definitely in the climate of today, like, why you would want to do that. Because, yeah, it's interesting that, especially in a class like that, I would think, you know, the whole point is that, like, everyone can talk and has a voice. And if you can't listen to some of those voices, like, you know,
well, and
it's not really a college.
And have you heard of Billboard Chris?
Yeah.
Well, he came to PSU a couple weeks ago, and he was protested.
Yeah, and I know that little square where he was. I've shot, like, videos and stuff there.
And one of the, I think it was geography, like, assistant professors came out and assaulted him. And so, and you had a few students who showed up on camera, but, like, one guy was so scared of repercussions. You know, he covered his head with his shirt. Another girl was almost in tears. Like, I'm going to get in deep trouble for this.
Yeah.
But, like, me, I guess I've been lucky. I've been able to speak somewhat freely, and I haven't really received any pushback personally yet.
That's good, though. And you've been a couple years there?
Yeah, I'll be a junior.
Okay. Wow. That's surprising, though, that it's not as bad. Because I would imagine it was, like, real bad as far as, like, wokeness there.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, I was shocked. It's not as bad as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone wants to know more, you can find me at Silly Flippy with an F on Twitter or Instagram.
Yeah, dude, thanks so much for coming by. If you want to follow this man, we'll put his handle up here on the screen. But yeah, thanks so much for coming in, man. I'm glad to have you.